who has been Vice Chancellor of 2 full universities. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Professor Yakub attended the Bayero State University, Kano, Bayero University, Kano, University of Toronto in Canada, University of Sussex in United Kingdom, and was a leading intellectual in Africa when he was asked to be Vice Chancellor of the University of Abuja. This is Diplomatic Hour with Uwe Lakemfa on Citizen 93.7 FM, Abuja. You're welcome. So we'll just take a break. Citizen 93.7 FM, Abuja. We have with us Professor Nur Yakub, leading intellectual in Africa, prolific author, former Vice Chancellor, University of Abuja, former Vice Chancellor, Sokoto State University, who retired on March 7, 2021 from the university. So welcome once again, sir.
Thank you so very much.
Yes, sir. Well, let's start with Nigeria's foreign policy.
Okay.
How do you assess it today?
I think we will have to acknowledge that Nigeria has been, I mean, if you look at it historically, Nigeria has been a prominent player in the African setting in terms of foreign policy, input and expected results. Nigeria, as we all know, was in the front line, of the liberation of countries in Africa that, up till the early 90s, were still under colonial rule. And as I'm talking now, I think we should also remind ourselves that we still have one territory, that is Western Sahara, which is also still, under colonial, a very fascistic colonial, tutelage. And we need to be aware of this and also, try to see how we can actually raise the consciousness of Nigerians to, probably encourage Nigerian government, to continue to assume and play the proactive role it has been playing in African, liberation processes over the years. So if we are to look at, that is, I mean, the mere fact that we still have a country in Africa that is controlled by Morocco, after the Spanish people left, the territory, we need to, as I said, we need to, put that on the front burner, because, to actually continue to have a territory, especially in the 21st century in Africa, that has not fully gained independence, it is actually a slap on the expected role of AU. But looking at Nigerian foreign policy, over time, I think we have to commend this country for the role it has played, when we had apartheid regime, the struggle it so, to the extent that it was so active, the EU made Nigeria, a frontline state. It's defined as a frontline state in the anti-colonial struggles in the southern African region. So I think, for me, Nigeria has done very well, and we are not surprised that, the trajectory of the foreign policy processes in this country were very well laid by the Prime Minister, the first and only one Prime Minister this country has had. That's Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, at especially the inaugural speech he made when he went to the United Nations, in November 1960 after the independence, and he's clearly set out the goals. We're not going to allow any African country to continue to be under colonial tutelage, and also that we will try as much as possible to work in tandem with the liberation fighters and see that their own country was liberated as Nigeria became independent, as of that time. So that trajectory has been maintained over the years, and Nigeria has played a very important role.
Before we leave this point, sir, you mentioned Western Sahara. As Nigeria's position on Western Sahara been very clear. In 1984, President Buhari, as military head of state, recognized Western Sahara as a country. But today, I'm not too sure it's a very clear position to take.
Well, the way I look at it is that the current Buhari regime is rather, how do I put it? It's rather not as proactive as it was when in 1984. He actually, took the initiative, which resulted in Polisario being admitted, as a member of the OAU then. What we're expecting is that now that he came back as a president, he will continue from where the process ended or stopped. At that point, actually stopped, not that it ended, because it's still a process that is on. He has not been able to, assume, the leadership role one expected him to take, and ensure that Western Sahara fully becomes independent of Moroccan subjugation. So I think that there is a need for civil society organizations in this country, and particularly the fact that there is the Nigerian Association on Western Sahara that has also been preoccupied with the liberation of this territory to put pressure on government. But my fear also is that he has been there for 7 years and nothing has been done. He's left only with a year to go, so not much can be achieved. But I'm sure if with Professor Gambari as his chief of staff there with him, and he was also the foreign minister, when he was the military head of state. This is something I think both of them could actually put heads together and ensure that Western Sahara is fully liberated.
Thank you very much. We can go to ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States. Are we sure we are being proactive in ECOWAS, or it's just going on? For instance, we are talking about a single currency, nothing has happened about it. And in fact, the whole war against terrorism, I'm not too sure how central ECOWAS has been.
Well, let's take specific issues, like the issue of a currency you have mentioned. You also know that the French people, France, has very significant interest in the French territories in West Africa, and they have also been working across purpose against the interests of against the larger interests of members of ECOWAS. Yes, ECOWAS has aspired to come out with single currency for the regional organization, but what is happening is that the French, together with the connivance of some French members, French-speaking countries within West Africa, they have also not been able to assert their independence. If you take into consideration the fact that what do I call it? The foreign, is it foreign currency or the foreign?
The currency, the ECO?
No, not even the currency. I'm talking of the foreign
policy of.
The money. The money they actually make from exports.
Okay.
Everything is, is deposited in the French central government. Central bank.
Yeah.
And that it is only when the French government accepts to release a portion of what they need, not even everything they need. Yeah. And they don't even know. In fact, the fact of the matter is that they don't even know how much they have, because they don't have access to exactly what is the foreign exchange that they can make use of from their export earnings. So I think the major problem where ECOWAS is having is largely because most of the members of ECOWAS are French speaking, and they are, dependent on France. So I think if ECOWAS wants to be, proactive in this manner, they will have to also work, very strenuously to make sure that, the umbilical cords between the French, state and, the French-speaking countries in West Africa, as members of ECOWAS, will have to be broken somehow.
Well, that's for West Africa and integration. It also leads us to Africa and integration also, the African Union.
Yeah.
Do we have the same problems, or what's the challenge?
The challenge of AU is that as much as it has actually also, we have to give credit to the initiative of the independent African leaders that, were able to come together and form OAU in 1963. And, over the years, they have also tried to strengthen, the activities, strengthen and invigorate, the activities of the OAU to the extent that, it led to the transformation of OAU to AU, and the component that is especially at the AU level, you have the economic component as well as the political component. Politically, they are doing fine. They come, the annual, meeting of the heads of state, issues, that are of political nature, like the issue of, incessant coups in Africa, which luckily also for us, it has reduced, although particularly in West Africa, it is a phenomenon that is trying to rear its ugly head. Okay. But at the economic level, the AU is not doing as much, and it cannot also do as much because of the nature of the economies of African states. The economic situation in Africa is still very fragile, as far as I'm concerned. And with the bulk of French-speaking West African states, having virtually dependent on France, one could say that, there is still a lot to be done, at the AU level, from the economic perspective of the role the AU has to play. So it is a major agenda, going forward for the whole of African states.
You've already mentioned the issue about coups. What would you say are the causes of coups at least in West Africa? Well, in Africa, because we had the number. We had one in Zimbabwe, we had one in Sudan,
Yes.
we had in Cote d'Ivoire, we had in Burkina Faso, we had in Chad. What are the causes of this, and what can be done?
Well, if we go back to the theories of coup making, what we discover is that, there were quite a number of, for instance, let's take the example of Nigeria. When they carried out this coup in 1966, there was a litany of accusations against the civilian regime they toppled, or they were corrupt, they were, they were not pushing, national integration the way it should be done, and so on and so forth. But what have we come to see, especially if you take Nigeria as a prime example to analyze the issue of causes as well as impact? You will discover that, military intervention in Nigeria has actually worsened our situation, both politically and economically. In national integration, in fact, if anything, the military actually came to kill it, as far as I'm concerned, because, you can only actually, develop the issue of national integration if you have a democratic setup. What am I saying? What I'm simply trying to point out is that it is through democratic politics that a country as diverse and heterogeneous as Nigeria could actually see to what extent programs or projects can be put in place to ensure that the diverse people of Nigeria can begin to develop common identity. But the military just came, and it was dictatorship anyway. And therefore, the military rulers, without exception as far as I'm concerned, actually embark on, personalistic, administration. So we never really got a military regime. Well, maybe some people will say, oh, Murtala was trying to be different, but of course, we cannot completely judge Murtala's achievement because it was a short spell of about 6 months in office. But the fact of the matter is that right from Ironsi up to Absalam Abubakar, you can never, under military regime in Nigeria, we have not been able to, achieve a major objective of nation building, which is national integration.
What about in Africa?
In Africa, it's the same thing, because most African states are also diverse. They may not be as complicated as it's the case in Nigeria. But, hardly the only country one or two countries that, could be said to be, nations Somalia will come, into focus. But look at it also how, clannish politics, destroyed that country. And it was also worsened by the fact that the military was involved in governance for a very long time. So I believe that the participation of the military in African politics, especially based on Western theories of, the military is the vanguard, body that could bring about development, modernity, and so on. I mean, those are just, imperialist, theorizations, just to justify, the fact that imperialism was also partly behind, the various military coups we have had in Africa.
Thank you very much. This is Diplomatic Hour with Owela Kemfa on Citizen 93.7 FM Abuja. We're speaking with Professor Nu Yakub, who is an expert on African affairs. He's been talking about the situation in Nigeria, in West Africa, and in Africa. Prof, we are supposed to be a democracy.
Yeah.
We're democratic institutions in Africa. Are African countries really democratic? Or some people will argue that we are on our way to democracy. Some will argue that what we have is civilian rule. Are we, in that sense, a democratic continent?
No. No, because even where you have a semblance of electoral politics, you discover that, the politics is, the election is violent. The election is not transparent. And those that, eventually emerge as so-called winners of the elections, are people who are not even accountable to the citizenry. So for me, I keep on saying, especially in Nigeria and in several other African countries, what we have is not the democracy. At best, we can call it civilian, rule. So I do not make any mistakes at all in, coming to the conclusion that there is democracy anywhere in Africa. Probably you can talk about, of course, for any rule there's an exception. You can talk about Botswana, which is relatively stable, but in other countries where they have not had military coups, for instance, in Kenya, what kind of democracy are you talking about under Jomo Kenyatta, or is it Arap Moi, and so on and so forth? So it's difficult. As a political scientist, indeed, I cannot ascribe to what the governance system that we generally have in Africa as democratic. In fact, in my latest paper, which is going to be published by a journal in the US, I refer to even what we have in Nigeria as, autocracy or democratic, aspiration, undergirded by, autocracy. Yes, that's what we have. Because, is it, other than the election of 2015, that was conducted under the chairmanship of Atahiru Jega. I don't think that we have actually had, or been having elections that have not either, they have to be suspended at a point because, the process was already, negated by, either ballot snatching, or, people, giving money to buy votes, and or, you have situation where voters are, they are scattered. Even when they queue up to come and vote, suddenly you discover that, rented thugs of the politicians have come to actually drive them away from the voting scene in order to carry away the ballot box, which will now go to be, it will now be used to, bring a result that is not authentic at all. So I will hesitate, and I'll continue to hesitate, to call what the governance process we have in Africa as democratic. Some people will want to embellish it by saying it is in transition to democracy, but that one is also a questionable formulation.
So are we looking at change now? Because say if you take a case in Nigeria, you have at least 50 people who have paid huge sums of money to the two leading parties, so that they can be their candidate. Is it what does that show? Is it that there are a lot of people who are anxious to serve the country, or it's all a game?
It is a circus, and the way I see it, I call it a circus because, I do not even know what is it that, any of these candidates is coming up with. Of course, it is not yet time for campaigns, so we don't know what is going to be the content of the
programs.
The programs, yes. So, but when you have people, for instance, let me give examples of the Senate president. I thought, he had just spent, one tenure as the Senate president, and if there are still even problems with his leadership in the Senate because of the way it's generally described as being too loyal to the executive branch, the way he's leading the legislative assembly. And one would have expected that, this first tenure of his is a learning process that he needs to consolidate if he can still remain go for the Senate. But now he has also joined the bandwagon of those who want to succeed Buhari. And what is also amazing, as Governor Nweke would say, he's surprised that people are saying the Buhari regime has, achieved something that they want to complete. Generally, what is it? I was reading through some WhatsApp messages, and there was this particular one that somebody brought and said Buhari was shown on the in the footage, and they were saying we are going to solve the problem of. Nigerians will know that it is no more game as
business as usual.
Business as usual.
Yeah.
We are going to stop corruption. We are going to tackle corruption. And people are now saying that is corruption, not as bad or even worse. Particularly, Babangida said, his corruption during his time was even more saintly than what is happening at the moment.
Thank you very much, Prof. This is Diplomatiic Hour with the Will Akemfa on Citizen 93.7 FM Abuja. We're talking with Professor Nui Yakub. Let's go to the war in Ukraine, sir.
Yes.
That's the main thing that has occupied the world in the last few years.
That's right.
Was this war inevitable? Is it being run well?
Well, I think the way I see it is that, well, I mean, let me put it this way: the Russian leadership, will need to be cautioned, because I mean, you cannot, especially in international system, just spring out, come out and declare war on another sovereign state. That is one point that I see, which Russian leadership, will have to, accept as, a negative point against them. But the other thing is that the leadership in Ukraine has also lent, his country to the Russians to destroy at will. And exactly that is what we're having. And he's I think he must be a leader that will know what to have his head examined. Why I'm saying this is that you cannot, be relying on foreign powers like the US or European Union that cannot, come out directly to tackle, the problem of invasion by Russians. I don't know what is it, but my own assumption is that, of course, the American leadership or the Europeans that are supporting him, they are not very sincere. They are not sincere in the sense that they don't want this war to extend. I mean, the Soviet leadership, I'm sorry, I keep on saying
the Russian leadership.
The Russian leadership, I keep as if it is the Soviet Union is still like in existence. The Russian leadership, is it appears to me as if he's prepared to go the whole hog and declare and actually, tackle, extend this conflict to, the larger European Union countries, and on the understanding that, if they want the Third World War, because actually Putin has mentioned that this could be a prelude to the Third World War. He's prepared for it, and this man, the Soviet, the Ukrainian leader is, knows that America will not come and fight their war, especially if it gets more, nasty. But at the same time, he doesn't even appreciate the fact that, his country is the one that is the theater of war and it is being destroyed. I don't know how they are going to recover. I don't know.
Well, okay, the issue of sanctions. Sanctions have been used against countries like Cuba for over 6 decades, against Venezuela, against Iran, and a number of countries like that. Now it was used against Russia. It does not seem to be having the same effect.
It will not have, because Russia is also, first of all, it's a developed country, and it has very strong economy to rely upon. And luckily also for Russia, the Chinese are there that are giving them moral and diplomatic support. So in a sense, yes, sanctions have been used against less endowed or less developed countries that you have mentioned. But I think the situation is totally different from, in terms of impact on Russia.
Well, can we say this is the end to such sanctions? Or
no, well, it will still, as we have tried to analyze, it will still have impact on smaller countries or countries with smaller economies. Okay, but what I think is that it may also now begin to, transform or is going to have an impact on the world order, the way I look at it. And it is going to have an impact on the world order because now it is Russia versus the West generally, let's put it that way. And it's not, even at the United Nations, they could not, with the veto power that Russia has, it could not, be dissuaded from continuing with the war against Ukraine. So, and I believe that this is likely to be a turning point in the global order, in the sense that countries that feel sufficiently powerful can decide to actually make, the UN look, very ineffective. And, I don't know how, what is going to come out of it. The scenario is still unfolding, and it is, very difficult to predict exactly what is going to happen. But I think the impact of this war is going to have, such an impact. I mean, the impact will actually be felt in the global world order. Global order.
Are we seeing or looking at a new global world order?
Well, I think we it's possible that what will emerge from this war is going to have a direct impact on the global order. It's going to have, because it's not going to be, as long as the United Nations exists and you still have the 5 or so, veto power carrying, nation states, it is going to be difficult to actually, create. I mean, it's no more a unipolar. In fact, a lot of us, in international relations discourse, have been thinking that, there's only one global, one superpower, that is the US, after the collapse of the Soviet Union. But we can now see also that any of the veto, wielding, UN members of the security, right? Mm-hmm. They are there to sabotage, what the basic tenet for the existence of the UN is all about, which is, promoting global peace. It's going to, I mean, any other country, if it is China that intends to attack Taiwan now, China will also draw a lesson, from what has happened with between Russia and Ukraine. And I sincerely, I honestly think that, it is, if it does happen, the Russians will also support China, as China has done in this particular war with Ukraine.
Thank you very much, Prof. This is Diplomatic Hour with Wela Kemfa on Citizen 93.7 FM Abuja. We're speaking with Professor Nuhu Yakub. You talked a number of times about the United Nations. Is it still a relevant body, or how relevant do we think it is now?
Well, if we look at it from the perspective of when it was set up, and it was set up, when there were two global powers, the defunct Soviet Union, and the West generally, and with the collapse of the Soviet Union, everybody just assumed, oh, there's just one global power that will be able to dictate to all the countries, except members of either NATO or those who are within the Western orbit or bloc. But as it is now, any country that feels sufficient, like let me even include India now. India is sufficiently powerful, as to say, okay, if it is going to be war against Pakistan, they can also spring a surprise attack on Pakistan, and the rest of the world will have no option but to listen to them. And Japan may also, because of the development that has taken place, may even work towards liberating itself and going and embarking on militarization, which was denied it after the Second World War. And I can also imagine, especially if there's a crack in the Western world, Germany also assuming independent role. So that is the Russian-Ukrainian war is actually, a major footnote to the likelihood of changes in the global, affairs.
No, thank you very much. The issue about veto in the United Nations is a major issue, which has led to some of us think the UN is not a democratic organization because of that. Now there are people who ask for reforms. There are countries who say, look, let us add more countries to that. And there are those who say, look, no, the whole issue about veto should just be, removed, and let countries, maybe 2/3 of member countries, take decisions. Well, what do you think about it?
Well, the way you put it, the way you put the question clearly indicates that yes, since it is not a democratic institution at that level, then of course, veto power is utterly useless, and it should not be granted to even any other country. So, if there's going to be a major reform on the basis of contemporary developments in global affairs, I think that what should happen is that the veto power should be removed. It should not be granted to anybody, any country. Of course, the West will not, be a party to this. There's no doubt about that, because they also want to come up with this economic argument. Oh, we are the ones largely supporting the UN. Yes, they may come up with that kind of argument, and they will resist, anybody an attempt. But if you decide to enlarge it, it has not also removed the problem, the stigma of the Security Council not being democratic enough, because the other countries that are not members are likely, playing, the role of puppets, in a very, a very serious, global issue that requires very serious, attempt, to get it working more effectively than it is at the moment. So I think that, the best thing is, countries should unite, especially, the group of G77 or whatever, the third world countries, really coming up with, a united stand and demanding, that, the veto power granted to the 5 countries should be, removed, yes, and let everybody be equal. And if it also means that, they can come up with a suggestion that they are prepared to take greater responsibilities for running the UN, then we can now have a UN that is actually promoting the original ideals that led to its setting up after the Second World War.
You are on to Diplomatic Hour with Wela Kemfa on Citizen 93.7 FM Abuja. We are with us Professor Nu Yakub, and he was talking about the United Nations. Prof,
yes.
There was the whole issue about the non-aligned movement.
Well, okay, go on.
Okay, yeah, please go on.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that it has become likely moribund. And I think, if we relate it to this issue of veto power, that we're talking about the UN, that is where, any serious attempt at reforming the UN must come from the non-aligned countries, because, if they don't unite, it is very likely that, they cannot actually push the already privileged 5 countries that have, veto power, to yield to any changes. So I think that there's a need, even though, when the whole notion about non-aligned movement is that they're neither for West nor for East. The East is not more even there. The West is still there. So non-alignment now will have to embrace any other country that, probably belong in the East Bloc or the Western Bloc, the NATO Bloc. Let them align together and come up with, a democratic agenda that can, lead to the reformation of the UN, as I put it, earlier.
Yeah, do we have countries that can lead that? Leaders in the world that can lead that?
Well, I mentioned India just now.
Okay.
India is sufficient. In fact, I am so impressed with the position of the Foreign Affairs Minister. India's permanent representative at the United Nations. He came out, very strongly condemning the U.S. and he said the country knows the value of of Russia or the Soviet Union when it was having, having a confrontation with Pakistan in the late 60s, early 70s to part of the 80s, and he said they will not therefore forget the role that, what is now left of the Soviet Union, which is Russia. They will not forget the role, Russia has played to ensure, that, they could stand up against, the machinations of the Western countries. So if we have a country like India and, maybe if Indonesia, can also, put its house in order. And this is one thing again that has, that has repercussion on the way, Nigeria places, foreign policy. Nigeria should actually be coming up with ideas. What is it we can do? What projects can we embark upon? What can we do to actually, exercise the sort of influence that, a country like India can exercise in Asia? So what is the role of Nigeria in also exercising that leverage in African affairs? And we can now, Nigeria can now leverage on that, on such resources, to actually create, a kind of, a uniform position from Africa. So if we are having these regional, blocks, working together, non-aligned movement or whatever it may now even be referred to, or whatever nomenclature is given to it, it can now come and, constitute a block against especially the Western interests, at the global level.
Thank you very much. You are on to Diplomatic Hour with Wela Kemfa on Citizen 93.7 FM. We're speaking with Professor Nuh Yakub, one of the leading intellectuals on our continent in Africa. And I'm going to ask a question, Prof.
Yes.
You spent your life intellectualizing. And we have a world that seems to be, in trouble.
Yes.
So, can intellectuals save the world?
Well, the simple answer I can give to this question is if they are given the chance. if they are given the chance, why not? Because ideas are the ones that actually, create the necessary changes. But intellectuals are supposed to be people with ideas. And, it is amazing what ideas have actually, brought into being since the Industrial Revolution took place. Now, even if you go back to the time of the Renaissance, the new ideas have come, state formation has come, democratic politics has been consolidated in places, attempts have also been made, to fight, totalitarianism, autocracy in several countries, and so on and so on. These are, the struggle, at the level of changing, our existential conditions is one that was promoted or pursued through ideas which intellectuals, have provided largely. And I think that, if, as I said earlier, if, intellectuals are given the opportunity, and they are even tasked to produce, if you like, models of, the future society that, we should have or we should be in. And I think, they will be able to do so. Otherwise, if intellectuals have not been born over the years or centuries or ages ago, I don't think that we will be where we are today. So intellectuals are still relevant.
Okay. Well, with the issue about how we give intellectuals the opportunity or chance, and what kind of world they can build, we'll continue to discuss and debate. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
This has been Diplomatic Hour with Wela Kemfa on Citizen 93.7 FM, Abuja. And we'll be speaking with Professor Nuh Yakub. Thank you very much, sir, for coming.
Thank you also
very much
for involving me this morning. I've also enjoyed myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. So thank you. We meet next week, Friday. Thank you.